Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So it seems there's now just one more nail in the coffin of justice, and that the powers that be plan to seal it off and just bury it for good with fake investigations of what went wrong or how it went wrong, why it went wrong in the Epstein investigation. So in 2018, the FDLE, which stands for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, they began a so-called investigation into the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office and the Palm Beach prosecutors who were overseeing the Jeffrey Epstein case. Epstein, as you're probably well aware, was accused of molesting and raping over 12 young girls initially, and the case was initiated by the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, but it was then ultimately taken over by the Miami U.S. Attorney, which at the time was Alex Acosta. So Acosta, as you likely know, went on to give Epstein the most ridiculous slap on the wrist ever for a child sex trafficker, complete with a non-prosecution agreement for him and his co-conspirators, and a 13-month work release sentence where he really only truly spent 1 day per week in county jail over those 13 months. So Acosta's part in this whole sham was recently investigated, and they cleared him, which was complete and utter bullshit. And now the local authorities and attorneys have received the same bullshit exoneration. So this is according to a 24-page summary of the FDLE findings. State Attorney Barry Krischer and his assistant state attorney, Lana, I believe you pronounce her name, Belolavec, they say that the two of them did nothing wrong. The FDLE claims they found no evidence that either one committed any crimes, accepted bribes, or that they handled this case improperly in any way, shape, or form. Although the report concedes that it, quote, appears that Epstein received differential treatment. Here's the deal. Here, if you're not familiar, while he was in custody, they noted that Epstein met all of the criteria for work release that's established by the county sheriff, because the county sheriff has the sole authority to decide who's going to go to prison, who's going to go to jail, and who's going to get work release. So they thought that Epstein qualified for work release. A guy who's preying upon tons of young girls, in some cases, little girls. I mean, we know for a fact that there's girls 10 and 11 years old that he's accused of violating. And in addition, there were also allegations made against Epstein while he was in custody, so to speak, while he was serving this ridiculous 13-month work release sentence. He was accused of sexually abusing 2 women while he was supposed to be serving time for his other sexual assault crimes. But the FDLE says that the 2 women refused to cooperate with their investigation, so they had insufficient evidence of the crimes. Gee, I wonder why they're refusing to cooperate. Maybe because they know the whole thing is bogus and they're putting their lives at risk by saying anything. So one of the things this bogus investigation purported to review was the fact that 91 off-duty deputies worked in shifts to provide security for Epstein while he was serving his 13-month sentence and while he was traveling to and from his office and home and the jail every day. FDLE found nothing wrong with this whatsoever. They claim that these off-duty deputies were hired by Epstein for his personal protection, so they weren't there to monitor him. You're telling me that you had nearly 100 different officers who provided security for this guy, and somehow, right under their nose, while he is supposed to be on work release for sexual assault crimes, he sexually abuses 2 additional women. Nothing abnormal there. Jesus God. So they said these deputies didn't check on him. No, you don't say. They said if he was behind closed doors, they didn't go in to check on what he was doing, and they didn't monitor his computer or his email correspondence. The guy was under arrest. He was supposed to be in custody. This is beyond absurd. The FDLE also found nothing wrong with the fact that Epstein had his own private area in the jail. They also said that he had his own personal television in this private area of the jail. But they claim that Epstein needed to be segregated from the general population because they were concerned that he, quote, was at risk of being extorted by other inmates or extorting other inmates himself. And they were also concerned because they couldn't, quote, identify boyfriends or associates of his victims who were incarcerated with Epstein who might want to harm him. But no other inmates were afforded this preferential treatment. How do they even know? Why would they even assume that boyfriends or associates of his victims were incarcerated? These were young girls. These were little girls in some cases. Why would they have associates in prison? And the Miami Herald points out that while Epstein was incarcerated, if you can even call it that, he purchased 2 pairs of size 5 women's panties from the jail store. This was documented in his jail purchase log that they requested and received, but no one has ever explained why. Why this man who's supposed to be under arrest for sexual assault crimes is purchasing women's panties. So here's the deal. Over the course of Acosta's investigation, it's my understanding that up to or over 100 victims came forward. This piece of shit was accused of violating 100 children that we know of. Yet you had the local sheriff, local attorneys, and nearly 100 deputies who were all completely cool with that. In fact, he was given so much freedom while he was supposed to be serving this BS 13-month slap on the wrist sentence that he was able to get away with sexually abusing 2 additional women while being guarded by these deputies who apparently were willing to sell their souls to the devil himself. Now, one major failure in this case that they identified was the laws in Florida at that time. Unfortunately, prior to 2016, the state of Florida identified Epstein's victims as prostitutes. They considered them to be prostitutes because he paid them for sex. Now, luckily, even in the cray-cray state of Florida, they amended their laws in 2016. So now they at least acknowledge that a minor can't give consent, that it's not legal, and if they're coerced into sex or even prostitution, those who use them for those purposes can be held accountable. Unfortunately, at that time, that was not the case. Another thing that really pissed me off in reading all of this and this report is how little respect they showed these victims. First of all, the FDLE report notes that the state attorneys didn't even bother to interview these girls themselves. Instead, what they did was they just listened to and watched interviews that had been conducted by the lead detective. And one glaring issue, another thing that pisses me off, is that they had a male lead detective. So this man was interviewing these traumatized, victimized young girls, children. Remember, some of them were in middle school. That means 12, 13, 14 years old. Now, he seems like a decent guy. His name was Joe Riccari. He was the lead detective on the case, and unfortunately, he passed away in 2018. But prior to his death, he admitted to the Miami Herald that, quote, some of the girls were too frightened to admit what happened, or they minimized the abuse out of embarrassment. You think? You don't say. When are police departments, when is law enforcement going to pull their heads out of their asses and realize that the last thing a young girl a child or a woman even wants to do after being violated by a man is to open up to another male, a total stranger, and then explain in graphic detail how she was violated. Are you freaking kidding me? Now, to his credit, as I said, this Rickeri guy seemed like a decent person. He wanted to pursue more serious charges against Epstein. He told the Miami Herald that he believed they had a solid case. He said they had enough physical evidence, they had witnesses, and he believed they had enough to levy substantial charges against Epstein. Over the course of his investigation, he was able to locate 3 victims and 7 witnesses to testify before a grand jury. And Rickeri even issued arrest warrants because he wanted to charge Epstein with 2 second-degree felonies. However, the state attorney and his assistant stepped in and they said that, no, I don't think we can get beyond reasonable doubt in a jury trial. So they refused Rickeri's arrest warrants. They also didn't want to prosecute any victims over the age of 15 because they said they believed that the jury would see them as prostitutes. Unfortunately, 2 of the victims who alleged that Epstein raped them were 16 and 17 at the time. So prosecutors refused to include these 2 young girls in their case. This thing was screwed up in every conceivable way. But beyond that, I mean, there were just so many people blocking and covering for him. It is absolutely vomit-inducing. And it just proves that as advanced as we are as a nation in the area of women's rights, we still don't value females as we should. And our laws certainly don't reflect an understanding of how sexual abuse and sexual assault can and does cause psychological harm, and that it can sometimes last a lifetime. Because I have to think that if lawmakers truly understood that, they would enact strict laws. There would be much stricter penalties for this kind of stuff. And so what if they weren't bribed into giving Epstein preferential treatment? So what if he didn't pay them off or buy them things? Threats work just as well. And why are we asking, once again, local law enforcement to investigate local law enforcement? That's like asking someone to investigate their own family member. How fair and impartial is that investigation going to be? Especially when it comes to something as monumental as this. This case has captured the attention of not just the nation, but the entire world. They had no intention of finding any wrongdoing. This was a foregone conclusion. This was all for show, I guarantee you. They know that Epstein didn't commit suicide, and they don't want to end up like him. They don't want to end up in hell with him, at least not yet. All of the people who looked the other way and who made his crimes against children possible should burn in hell for all eternity. And those who defended him too. Let's talk about some of those, because QAnon loons love to point out Epstein's connections to the Clintons, and they are very real. Clinton and Epstein were far too close, and he's been seen on the island. He lied about being on the island. If he's done something wrong, he should pay for it. Absolutely, 100%. I have no love lost for Bill Clinton. But they seem to ignore the fact that Alan Dershowitz, the man who has been accused himself of having sex with one of Epstein's underage victims, gladly stepped up to defend Epstein, as did Ken Starr, the man who many on the right see as a hero for trying to take down Bill Clinton. These are 2 Fox News favorites, and Dershowitz is constantly on right-wing propaganda channels like Fox and Newsmax and others defending Trump, another Epstein buddy who he himself also was accused of raping a 13-year-old child at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. So funny how all of that is conveniently left out of the QAnon conspiracy bullshit. I mean, if they really care about pedophiles, then they should care about all pedophiles, not just the ones who have a D behind their name. Anyway, guys, this just really pissed me off, so I will let you know if I hear any more. As always, thanks so much for watching and listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk with you soon. Take care.